My parents defended my brother's $40K debt, tried to access my bank account, and called me selfish for saying no. Here's how I fought back. My family tried to steal $40,000 from my life savings to pay off my brother's debt, but they never imagined I was recording their every word. The clinking of silverware against my mother's best china was the only sound in the room, a fragile rhythm against a backdrop of suffocating silence. It was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, an occasion that should have been filled with laughter and fond reminiscences. Instead, the air in their formal dining room was thick with unspoken resentments, a familiar smog I had been breathing my whole life. I sat opposite my brother, Leo, and his wife, Cora. My parents flanked the head and foot of the table, my father looking uncomfortable in his suit, my mother radiating a tense, brittle cheerfulness. She had insisted on this dinner, insisted we all be here, together, like a normal family. I knew better. In our family, together was just a prelude to a demand. I had been clean for 5 years. 5 years of painstaking work, of rebuilding a life that addiction had nearly burned to the ground. I had a steady job in data analysis, a small but comfortable apartment, and a savings account that, for the first time in my adult life, had a comma in it. More than a comma, actually. I had just received a significant bonus, a reward for leading a project that had saved my company a fortune. That bonus, combined with my diligent saving, had pushed my balance over $100,000. It was my security, my proof of a life reclaimed. It was also, I was beginning to suspect, the reason I was sitting at this table. More wine, darling? My mother asked, her voice a little too bright. She gestured toward me with the bottle, a Merlot she knew I wouldn't drink. It was a small jab, a subtle reminder of the person I used to be, a way of keeping me in my place. No thank you, Mom. I'm good with water, I said, keeping my voice even. I took a deliberate sip from my glass, my hands steady. I would not give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Cora watched me from across the table, her eyes narrowed. She was a master of observation, always cataloging weaknesses. She wore a dress that cost more than my monthly rent, a silent testament to her and Leo's profligate spending habits. Leo, my brother, just stared at his plate, his shoulders slumped. He had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the screw-up, the project, the cautionary tale. But the gold had long since tarnished, flaking away to reveal the soft, pliable metal underneath a man easily molded by his wife's ambitions and his parents' indulgence. Well, this is lovely, my mother chirped into the void. All of us here. It's been too long. It certainly has, Cora said, her voice smooth as silk but with an edge of steel. She placed her fork down with a delicate click. And speaking of things that have been going on for too long, Leo and I are in a bit of a bind. Here it comes, I thought. The overture was over. The opera was about to begin. My father shifted in his chair, suddenly finding the pattern on the wallpaper fascinating. He was a good man, in his way, but conflict made him shrink. My mother, on the other hand, leaned forward, her expression shifting from strained festivity to one of grave, rehearsed concern. Your brother has some unexpected expenses. My mother began picking up the thread Cora had laid down. It's a terrible situation. Just terrible. I looked at Leo. He wouldn't meet my gaze. What kind of expenses? I asked, my voice flat. I already knew the answer would be a carefully constructed fiction. It's complicated, Cora said, waving a dismissive hand. Some investments that didn't pan out. The market is so volatile. And a few medical bills. Nothing serious, but they add up. Investments. Medical bills. The official story. I had heard whispers from my cousin that Leo was in deep with credit card debt, that Cora's boutique clothing addiction and their insistence on luxury vacations had finally caught up to them. But in this house, the truth was always subject to revision. How much? I asked. The word hung in the air like a puff of smoke. My mother took a deep breath. $40,000. I didn't flinch. I had been expecting a number with a lot of zeros. I simply nodded, processing. $40,000. A staggering sum to them, a life-altering amount to me. It represented years of skipped lunches, of driving a 15-year-old car, of saying no to myself so I could finally say yes to a future. That's a lot of money, I said quietly. We know, my father mumbled, finally speaking up. It's a terrible weight on your brother, and we all need to help, my mother added, her eyes locking onto mine. A family helps each other. We've already tapped into our retirement savings for as much as we could. We've done our part. The implication was clear. Now it was my turn. The unspoken accusation hung in the air. We, your parents, have sacrificed our future for your brother. What will you, the selfish daughter, sacrifice? We know you got that big bonus, sweetie, Cora said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. We're all so proud of you. And it's just wonderful that it came at the exact time your family needs you most. It's like fate. My stomach tightened. They weren't just asking. They were framing it as my duty, as a cosmic inevitability. The prodigal daughter, now flush with cash, finally gets her chance to repay the family for all the trouble she caused. The narrative was so neat, so tidy, and so utterly false. I took a slow, deliberate breath. I had been on a new anti-anxiety medication for the past month. My doctor had warned me that it could make me feel a bit foggy, a little slow on the uptake, especially when combined with stress. Right now, I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching this scene from behind a pane of glass. My emotions were muted, but my mind was surprisingly clear, and before I had left my apartment, a flicker of premonition, a ghost of past ambushes, had made me do something I'd never done before. I had turned on the voice recorder app on my phone and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I'm sorry to hear you're in trouble, Leo, I said, turning to my brother, but I can't help you. The silence that followed was no longer fragile. It was a solid, crushing weight. My mother's face fell, her cheerful mask cracking to reveal the hard disappointment beneath. Cora's eyes flashed with anger. Leo just seemed to deflate, sinking further into his chair. What do you mean, you can't? My mother demanded, her voice sharp. Of course you can. You have the money. It's not about whether I can, I explained calmly. It's my savings. It's for my future. For a down payment on a house someday. It's my emergency fund. An emergency? Cora scoffed, her voice rising. What kind of emergency could you possibly have that's more important than your own brother's? This is an emergency. They could ruin his credit. They could even take legal action. This isn't my debt, Cora, I said, my voice remaining level despite the tremor I felt starting in my hands. The medication was keeping the panic at bay, but I could feel it circling, waiting. I worked hard for that money. I clawed my way back from nothing to build that security for myself. I am not lighting it on fire to pay for your shopping sprees. The jab hit its mark. Cora's face contorted with rage. How dare you? You think you're so much better than us now, don't you? With your little job and your savings account. You, of all people, lecturing us about responsibility? Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget how many times your mother and father had to bail you out. That was different, I said, my voice hardening. I was sick, and I paid back every single penny they ever spent on my treatment. Every cent. It's not the same, my mother cried, her voice thick with emotion. We are your parents. He is your brother. This is what family does. You are being selfish. Unbelievably, horribly selfish. The word selfish was their ultimate weapon. They had been using it on me since I was a child. It was the button they pushed whenever I failed to conform to their expectations. For years, it had worked. It had filled me with guilt and shame, driving me to bend to their will. But not anymore. 5 years of therapy and 12-step meetings had taught me the difference between selfishness and self-preservation. No, I said, my voice low but firm. I am not. I am protecting myself. Something I learned I had to do the hard way. I stood up, my chair scraping against the polished wood floor. I think I should go. You're not going anywhere, Cora snapped. She stood up too, her face flushed. We are not finished here. And then she said the words that changed everything. The words that turned a family dispute into something far darker. It doesn't matter if you say no, she sneered, a triumphant, ugly look on her face. Your mother still has the information for that old savings account you opened when you were in college. The one she was a co-signer on. We tried it this afternoon, but it seems you moved the money. So, you're just going to give us the new account details. Or we'll find them. The room went silent. The fog from my medication seemed to burn away, replaced by a blinding, ice-cold clarity. They had tried to access my bank account without my permission. They had conspired together, located old information, and made a direct attempt to take my money. It wasn't a request. It was an attempted theft. My mother wouldn't look at me. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line of guilt and defiance. My father just stared, his mouth slightly agape, looking like a man who had just witnessed a car crash. Leo was ashen. I felt a profound sense of shock, a physical blow. The betrayal was so complete, so breathtakingly audacious, that I couldn't speak. I just stood there, swaying slightly. This was the moment of revelation. The final, ugly truth of my family laid bare. I was not a daughter or a sister. I was a resource. A walking, talking ATM that had inconveniently developed a password. Cora, mistaking my stunned silence for weakness, for the dazed confusion she had been hoping for, pressed her advantage. This was her moment of triumph, and she was going to savor it. She launched into a monologue, a torrent of vitriol and self-justification that she must have been rehearsing for years. You see, she said, her voice laced with contempt. You always make things so difficult, so dramatic. This could have been easy, a simple transfer. We would have even said thank you. But you have to make it all about you, your recovery, your hard work, as if you're the only one who's ever had problems. She started pacing in the small space between the table and the wall, her movements sharp and agitated, like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what it's been like for Leo, having a sister like you? The shame, the constant worry, the calls in the middle of the night. Your parents poured so much into you, so much time, so much money, so much emotion. And for what? So you could squirrel away a pile of cash and turn your back on them the first time they need something? I remained silent, my hand, hidden from her view, instinctively pressed against the phone in my pocket. Every word. It was capturing every single word. My outward expression was one of dazed hurt, which was not entirely an act, but inside, a different part of me was listening with chilling precision, like a lawyer gathering deposition testimony. That money you have, she continued, pointing a finger at me. You don't even deserve it. It's a fluke. A recovering junkie gets a lucky break. That money should belong to the family. It should be used to stabilize things, to help the son who has always been responsible, who has always been here, not the one who ran off and cost everyone a fortune in rehab bills. I paid them back, I whispered, the words barely audible. Oh, paying them back doesn't erase the damage, she spat. It doesn't erase the years of stress you put on your parents. This is your chance to actually make it right, not just financially, to show that you're finally part of this family again. But you can't even do that. You're just a selfish little girl, hoarding your winnings like a dragon. My mother, seeing my devastation, seemed to find her resolve. The guilt on her face was replaced by a hard righteousness. She was choosing her side. Cora is right, she said, her voice trembling with manufactured conviction. We have given you everything. We supported you through your darkest times. Now it is your turn to support your brother. This isn't a request. It's what you owe us. It's what you owe this family. The phrase "what you owe" echoed in the silent spaces of my mind. They truly saw it as a debt. My life, my sobriety, my second chance, it had all been a loan, and they were here to collect. The principal was $40,000. The interest was my soul. Just then, my phone, the one on the table next to my water glass, began to buzz. Not the one in my pocket recording this nightmare, but my actual, everyday phone. The screen lit up with a picture of my uncle, my dad's younger brother, Michael. He was my rock, the one person in the family who had seen me not as a problem to be solved, but as a person to be loved. He had championed my recovery when my parents had despaired. He was my safe harbor. Without thinking, driven by a primal need for an ally, I answered it and hit the speakerphone button. "Hey, Uncle Michael," I said, my voice shaking. "Hey, kiddo. Just calling to see how the anniversary dinner is going. Your mom's text made it sound like a command performance," he said, his voice warm and familiar. Before I could answer, Cora, oblivious or simply not caring, spoke again. "Hang up the phone," she commanded. "This is a private family matter." But it was too late. My uncle's voice came through the speaker again, all warmth gone, replaced by a sharp, concerned edge. "Private matter? What's going on, Anna? You sound upset." "She's fine," my mother snapped, glaring at the phone as if it were a hostile witness. "We're just having a discussion." "It's nothing, Uncle Michael," I tried to say, but my voice broke. And then Cora, in an act of supreme narcissistic arrogance, decided to address him directly. "Actually, Michael, since you're on the line, maybe you can talk some sense into your niece. She's refusing to help her own brother out of a financial crisis, even though she's sitting on a pile of money. She's being incredibly selfish and disrespectful to her parents." There was a dead silence from the phone. I could picture my uncle perfectly, sitting in his armchair, his brow furrowed, his easygoing demeanor vanishing as the implications of Cora's words sank in. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You're all ganging up on Anna to try and get her money? It's not like that," my mother protested. "It's for Leo. It's for the family. And we weren't just getting it," Cora added, her voice dripping with venom. "We were going to take it. We already tried to get into her old account today. She owes us." The confession, a second time, now with a witness. A chill went down my spine. This was it. The point of no return. My uncle's voice was like ice. "Anna, listen to me. Get your purse and your keys. Walk out of that house right now. Don't say another word to any of them. Just leave. I'm 10 minutes away. I'll meet you at the end of the street." His command cut through my shock and paralysis. It was a lifeline. I looked at the faces of my family. My mother's, twisted with anger and betrayal. Cora's, smug and furious. My brother's, a mask of pathetic misery. My father's, filled with helpless shame. They were strangers to me. Worse than strangers. I didn't say a word. I picked up my purse and my phone from the table. I walked towards the door, my movements feeling stiff and robotic. "Where do you think you're going?" my mother shrieked. "Don't you walk away from me! Anna, we are not done!" I opened the front door and stepped out into the cool night air. It felt like breaking the surface of the water after being held under for too long. I took a deep, shuddering breath and walked away from the house, the sound of my mother screaming, my name echoing behind me. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, my uncle's voice in my ear, the recording still silently running in my pocket. The war had begun. The drive to my uncle's house was a blur. Michael met me at the end of my parents' street, his old Subaru idling by the curb. I got into the passenger seat, and he just looked at me, his face etched with a mixture of anger and deep concern. He didn't press me for details, just put a hand on my shoulder for a moment and said, "You're safe now, kiddo." That simple gesture, that validation, was enough to make the dam inside me break. I spent the entire 10-minute drive to his house sobbing, not the loud, hysterical cries of the dinner party, but quiet, ragged sobs of profound grief. It was the sound of a family dying. My Aunt Carol was waiting for us, the front door open, a mug of chamomile tea already steaming on the kitchen counter. She wrapped me in a hug that felt like coming home, her warmth a stark contrast to the glacial chill of my mother's dining room. They sat with me at their worn oak kitchen table, a place of countless happy childhood memories, and they just let me cry until I was empty. Finally, my breath steadied. I took a long sip of the tea. "They tried to take my money," I said, my voice raw. "They had my old bank account information and they tried to use it." Michael's jaw tightened. Cora said as much on the phone. "The arrogance of that woman is astounding." "And Mom went along with it," I whispered. "She said I owed it to them." Carol shook her head, her expression one of sad resignation. "Anna, your mother, she loves Leo, but she's always been blind to his faults. And that wife of his, Cora, she knows exactly which strings to pull. She's been playing your mother like a fiddle for years, positioning you as the villain and Leo as the perpetual victim who just needs one more rescue." It was true. I had seen it for years, but hearing it articulated so clearly by someone else was validating. It wasn't just in my head. "But this is different," Michael said, his voice hard. "This isn't just emotional manipulation anymore. This is attempted theft. This is fraud." He leaned forward, his eyes serious. "Anna, what do you want to do about this?" The question hung in the air. Part of me, the exhausted, wounded part, wanted to do nothing. I wanted to crawl into the guest bed upstairs, pull the covers over my head, and pretend none of this had ever happened. I wanted to block their numbers, move away, and just disappear. But another part of me, a part that had been forged in the fires of recovery, knew that wasn't an option. They had crossed a line from which there was no return. If I let this go, they would never stop. They would see it as a victory, as proof that they could do whatever they wanted to me without consequence. They would come for my money, my peace of mind, my sanity, again and again. "I want to fight back," I said, the words tasting like metal in my mouth. "I don't know how, but I can't let them get away with this. I can't." Then I remembered. "I have proof," I said, my voice gaining strength. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my other phone. My hand was shaking as I stopped the recording. It had been running for over an hour. I recorded it, the whole thing. Cora's confession, Mom backing her up, everything. Michael and Carol exchanged a look of astonishment. "Good girl," Michael said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "That's my niece. Always smarter than they give you credit for." The next morning, Michael canceled his appointments for the day. He was a self-employed architect and could afford the flexibility. Dummian. First things first, he said, handing me a cup of coffee. Lawyer. We're not doing anything until we talk to a professional. He had a friend from college, Arthur Thompson, who was a partner at a well-respected law firm downtown. He specialized in civil litigation, including fraud and financial disputes. Michael called him, and by some miracle, Mr. Thompson had a cancellation and could see us at 11. Walking into that law office was like stepping into another world. It was all dark wood, leather-bound books, and quiet, competent energy. It was the world of consequences, of rules and repercussions. Mr. Thompson was an older man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened patiently as I recounted the story, my voice faltering at times. Michael sat beside me, a silent, solid presence. When I finished, I took a deep breath. And I have it on tape, I said, placing my phone on the polished surface of his desk. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. Can I hear it? I found the file and hit play. The sounds of my family's betrayal filled the quiet, expensive office. Cora's sneering voice, my mother's shrill accusations, my own quiet, trembling responses. We listened to the entire critical section, from the moment Cora mentioned the $40,000 to her final, damning admission that they had already tried to access my account. When it was over, Mr. Thompson was silent for a long moment. He steepled his fingers and looked at me. Mrs. Miller, he said, using my last name, which was a small but significant act of respect, this is more than a family squabble. This recording is devastatingly clear. In this state, we have one-party consent for recording conversations. This is admissible. This is your canon. He began to explain the legal landscape. We had multiple avenues. We could file for a restraining order based on the harassment. We could sue for damages related to emotional distress. And most importantly, we could pursue a claim for attempted conversion, the legal term for theft of property, and potentially even wire fraud, given their attempt to access a bank account electronically. The first step, he said, is to put them on notice. We'll draft a cease and desist letter. It will inform them that you are now represented by counsel, that all future communication must go through this office, and that any further attempts to contact you, harass you, or access your financial accounts will be met with immediate legal action. This will draw a line in the sand. He also advised me to go to my bank immediately, talk to the fraud department, tell them what happened, put extra security on your accounts, passwords, security questions, two-factor authentication, the works. Make it a fortress. Finally, he gave me a task. I want you to start a log, he said, pushing a legal pad and a pen across the desk. From this moment on, you will document everything. Every phone call, every text message, every email, every interaction, no matter how small. Date, time, who it was from, and what was said. Save everything. This log will become a crucial piece of our evidence. Leaving that office, I felt a strange mix of terror and empowerment. The path ahead was daunting, but for the first time, I had a map. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a plaintiff. That afternoon, I went to my bank. The manager of the fraud department, a kind woman named Maria, listened to my story with a grim expression. She pulled up the security logs for my old account. Here it is, she said, pointing to her screen. Yesterday, at 2:15 in the afternoon, multiple failed login attempts from an IP address that traces back to your parents' home address. They tried the password 6 times before the account was automatically locked. They knew your mother's maiden name, your first pet's name. They were trying to reset it. Seeing the cold, hard data on the screen solidified everything. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, calculated attack. Maria helped me lock down my current accounts with a level of security that would have impressed the Pentagon. She also provided me with a printout of the security log, officially stamped and signed. Another piece of evidence for the file. The cease and desist letter was sent via courier the next day. The response was immediate and predictable. My phone, which had been ominously silent, exploded. Not from my parents or Cora, they were apparently smart enough to heed the lawyer's warning for now, but from their network of enablers. My aunt on my mother's side called first. Anna, what are you doing? She cried, her voice frantic. Your mother is a wreck. You're tearing this family apart over a little bit of money. Leo is your brother. I took a breath and repeated the line my lawyer had coached me to use. I'm sorry, Aunt Carol, but I can't discuss this with you. Any communication needs to go through my lawyer, Mr. Thompson. I gave her his number and hung up, my hand shaking. Then came the texts. Cousins, old family, friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. The narrative had been spun. I was the cruel, unstable daughter, lashing out at my loving family. My past was dredged up and twisted. Anna's off her rocker again. She's probably using again. That's what happens. I heard she's just doing this for attention. Each message was a small paper cut to the soul. I meticulously screenshotted each one, saved it to a folder, and recorded it in the log, just as Mr. Thompson had instructed. The logbook became my ritual, a way to transform the pain into ammunition. It was a grim, soul-crushing task, but it gave me a sense of control. I was no longer just absorbing their poison. I was cataloging it, preparing it for analysis. To cope with the emotional onslaught, I threw myself into my support systems. I called my sponsor from my recovery program. They're using your past against you to control your present, she said, her voice calm and firm. That's a classic move. Don't let their version of your story overwrite your own. You know who you are today. I started going to an extra meeting every week, sharing my story in those rooms, without the gory details but focusing on the feelings of betrayal and the struggle for self-worth, was a balm. I also started seeing a therapist, a woman specializing in trauma and family dynamics. Her name was Dr. Evans. In our first session, I could barely get the words out. The shame of it all, of having a family like this, of having to take them to court support was immense. "Anna," she said gently, "shame is the tool of the abuser. They load you down with it so you're too heavy to fight back. Our work here is to put that shame down. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to them." Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated. My parents, through their own newly hired lawyer, responded to our letter. They didn't just deny my claims. They filed a counterclaim. It was a work of pure fiction, a document filled with breathtaking lies. They claimed that the money in my savings account was rightfully theirs, a gift I had promised them for their retirement. They alleged that my brother's $40,000 debt was actually money he had loaned me years ago during my addiction, and that this was all an elaborate scheme on my part to avoid repaying him. They were trying to flip the script, to paint me as the grifter, the manipulator. Their character assassination was relentless. The legal filing was full of humiliating details about my past, twisted and exaggerated to make me look unstable and unreliable. They were using the darkest moments of my life, the very things I had fought so hard to overcome, as weapons to discredit me in a court of law. Reading that document was one of the lowest points of my life. I felt exposed, violated, and utterly alone. I sat in my uncle's guest room, the papers shaking in my hand, and for a fleeting, terrifying moment, I wanted to give up. The thought of my past being dissected in a courtroom, of having to defend my sobriety, my sanity, to a judge, it was almost too much to bear. This was my rock-bottom crisis. I called my sponsor, my voice choked with despair. "I can't do this," I sobbed. "They're going to win. They'll just tell everyone I'm a crazy junkie, and people will believe them." "Breathe," she said. "Just breathe. They want you to feel this way. They want you to feel hopeless, because a hopeless person gives up. But you are not hopeless. You have the truth on your side, and you have that recording." Her words were a lifeline. She was right. This despair was their strategy. It was a tactic, just like the counterclaim. It was designed to break me. I would not let it. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and picked up the phone to call Mr. Thompson. "They filed a counterclaim," I said, my voice shaking but determined. "It's full of lies. What do we do now?" "We dismantle it," he said calmly, "piece by piece, with facts." The next phase of the battle was a slow, grinding war of attrition. The legal system, I learned, does not move quickly. It is a methodical beast that feeds on paper and time. We entered the discovery process, a period where both sides exchange information and evidence. It was grueling. Their lawyer sent us interrogatories, long lists of written questions I had to answer under oath. They were invasive and designed to trip me up. They asked for every address I had lived at for the past 10 years, every job I had held, detailed financial records, and, most painfully, a complete history of my substance abuse treatment, including dates, facilities, and doctors. My therapy sessions with Dr. Evans became my sanctuary. She taught me grounding techniques for when the stress became overwhelming. "Feel your feet on the floor," she'd say. "Name 5 things you can see in this room. This brings you back to the present, to a place where you are safe and in control." She helped me reframe their attacks. "When they bring up your past," she explained, "they think they are exposing a weakness. We are going to frame it as your greatest strength. Your recovery isn't a liability. It's evidence of your resilience, your character, and your commitment to the truth." One of the most difficult moments was the deposition. I had to sit in a sterile conference room for 6 hours while their lawyer, a slick man with a condescending smile, questioned me relentlessly. Michael and Mr. Thompson were there, but they could do little but object to improperly phrased questions. He grilled me about my past, about my finances, about my relationships. He tried to twist my words, to make me seem confused or angry. I felt like a bug under a microscope, but I held on. I clutched a small, smooth stone in my pocket, a grounding tool Dr. Evans had suggested. I answered every question with the simple, unvarnished truth. I did not rise to his bait. I did not let him see my fear or my rage. I just stated the facts, over and over. The real work, however, was happening behind the scenes. Mr. Thompson was a bulldog. He subpoenaed years of phone records and financial statements from my parents, Leo, and Cora. At first, their lawyer fought it, claiming it was an invasion of privacy. But the judge, having reviewed my initial evidence, including a transcript of the recording, granted our motion. And that's when we started to find the cracks in their story. The first breakthrough came from the bank records. Leo and Cora's statements showed a pattern of extravagant spending that bordered on pathological. Thousands of dollars at designer boutiques, 5-star hotel stays, payments for a luxury car lease that was wildly outside their declared income. There were no large, single payments to a hospital or a doctor that would justify a medical bill crisis. The $40,000 figure was simply the cumulative total of their credit card debt, accrued over a year of living a life they could not afford. The second, and most critical, discovery came from the subpoenaed text messages between my mother and Cora. It was the evidentiary turning point, the smoking gun. Mr. Thompson called me into his office to show me. My hands trembled as I read the transcript. Cora to Mom. "Heard Anna got a huge bonus. This is our chance to fix Leo's mess." Mom to Cora. "She won't just give it to us. She's gotten very selfish since she got clean." Cora to Mom. "Then we don't ask. You still have the info for that old account, right? The one you co-signed? Just get it. I can handle the transfer online. She'll think it was a bank error." Mom to Cora. "I don't know, Cora. That feels wrong." Cora to Mom. "What's wrong is your son's life being ruined while she hoards money she doesn't even deserve. Are you going to help your son or not? Find the paperwork." A few hours later, a final message from my mother. Mom to Cora. "Okay, the account number is 45XXXXX. The password hint is her first dog's name, Buddy. Try that. Just get it done before she notices." Reading those words felt like a physical blow. It was a premeditated conspiracy. The casual cruelty, the dismissal of my sobriety, the calculated plan to steal from me. It was all there, in black and white. They hadn't just gotten carried away in an argument. They had plotted this. I felt sick to my stomach, but I also felt a surge of cold, hard resolve. They had given us the rope to hang them with. Mr. Thompson looked at me, his expression grim. Their counterclaim just went up in smoke, he said. Their entire narrative has been obliterated. This is no longer about your word against theirs. This is about their own words, their own actions, documented and undeniable. We had a strategic decision to make. With this new evidence, we could likely force a settlement. They would probably agree to drop their counterclaim and sign a binding agreement to never contact me again, just to avoid this going to court. It was the safe, easy option. Or, Mr. Thompson said, leaning forward, we can go to trial. We can put you on the stand, play the recording, present these text messages, and ask a judge to rule on the matter formally. It will be more painful for you. It will be public, but it will be a definitive judgment. It will not be a quiet settlement. It will be a public record of their wrongdoing. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about the smear campaign, the lies they told our family, the way they had weaponized my deepest vulnerabilities. A quiet settlement would stop the bleeding, but it wouldn't cleanse the wound. It would allow them to retreat and spin a new narrative, to tell everyone that I had paid them to go away, or that it was all a misunderstanding. I needed more than that. I needed validation. I needed the truth to be spoken out loud in a place where it could not be denied. We go to trial, I said, my voice clear and steady. I want a judge to hear it all. The months leading up to the court date were a blur of preparation. We deposed my parents and Cora. Under the weight of the text message evidence, their stories began to crumble. My mother cried, claiming Cora had pressured her. Cora became sullen and defiant, answering questions with clipped, hostile responses. Leo, when deposed, was a pathetic figure. He claimed he knew nothing about the plan to access my account, that he thought they were just going to ask me for a loan. He was a passenger in his own life, and it was clear to everyone in the room. My legal team and I decided on our strategy. We would focus the case tightly on the attempted fraud and the harassment. We would use my past, not as something to be ashamed of, but as the backstory that explained the significance of my savings and the depth of their betrayal. My recovery wasn't a sign of instability. It was the foundation of my credibility. The day of the trial arrived. I walked into the courtroom feeling a strange sense of calm. My Uncle Michael and Aunt Carol were in the front row, their presence a silent source of strength. Across the aisle sat my parents and Cora, huddled with their lawyer. They wouldn't look at me. They looked smaller somehow, diminished under the weight of the formal proceedings. The trial itself was a surreal experience. Mr. Thompson laid out our case with methodical precision. He called the bank manager, Maria, who testified about the failed login attempts. He submitted the phone records, the bank statements showing Cora and Leo's spending, and the transcripts of the text messages. The evidence piled up, brick by brick, building an irrefutable case. Then, it was my turn to take the stand. My heart pounded in my chest, but I focused on my breathing, on the feeling of my feet flat on the floor, just as Dr. Evans had taught me. Mr. Thompson led me through my story gently. Why the savings were so important to me, what happened at the anniversary dinner, how it felt to be betrayed by my family. Then came the cross-examination. Their lawyer came at me with everything he had. He brought up my addiction, painting a picture of a volatile, unreliable person. Miss Miller, isn't it true you have a history of borrowing money from your family and not paying it back? He asked, his voice dripping with insinuation. No, that is not true, I replied calmly. During my illness, my parents paid for my treatment. After I got sober and was financially stable, I created a payment plan and paid them back every dollar. I have the bank records to prove it. You claim you were saving for a house, he sneered. But isn't it more likely that money was for something else? Given your history, perhaps you were afraid of a relapse? I am proud of my recovery, I said, looking directly at the judge. My savings are a symbol of my new life, not a hedge against my old one. They represent security and a future I built for myself. That is why I was protecting them, because I earned them. I earned that future. He tried to discredit my memory of the dinner, suggesting my anxiety medication had made me confused. You were medicated, were you not? Your perceptions might have been altered. This was the moment. My medication makes me feel calm, I said, my voice steady. It doesn't make me deaf. And with that, Mr. Thompson stood up. Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff would like to play a piece of evidence. A recording of the dinner party in question. The judge agreed. A clerk set up the speakers. And then the sound of Cora's voice filled the courtroom. It doesn't matter if you say no. We already tried to get into her old account today. You don't even deserve it. A recovering junkie gets a lucky break. A dead silence fell over the room. I risked a glance at my family. My mother was weeping silently into a tissue. Cora was staring straight ahead, her face a mask of stone, but a dark red flush was creeping up her neck. Their lawyer looked defeated. The recording was the kill shot. It was the truth, in their own voices. The rest of the trial was a formality. They had no defense. Their counterclaim was a joke. Their credibility was shot. The judge delivered his verdict a week later. It was, as I had come to expect, a form of incomplete justice. He found Cora and my mother jointly liable for attempted conversion and harassment. He dismissed their counterclaim with prejudice, meaning they could never file it again. He issued a significant monetary judgment against them to cover my legal fees and damages for emotional distress, a sum that, ironically, was slightly more than the $40,000 they had tried to steal. He also issued a 5-year restraining order, legally barring my parents, Leo, and Cora from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace. There was no jail time for Cora, only probation and a court-mandated financial management course. For my parents, there was just the judgment and the restraining order. It wasn't everything they deserved. It didn't erase the years of emotional manipulation. But it was a victory. It was a public, legally binding declaration that I was right and they were wrong. In the aftermath, I grappled with the meaning of it all. In a therapy session with Dr. Evans, I confessed that the victory felt hollow in some ways. I won, I said, but I lost my entire family. Did you? She asked gently. Or did you finally escape a system that was slowly killing you? Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about creating safety. You didn't just win a lawsuit, Anna. You won your life back. You enforced a boundary that you were never allowed to have. She was right. The verdict wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It was the foundation upon which I could finally build a life free from their influence. The first step was practical. With the money from the judgment, I covered my legal bills. The rest I put away, not with my other savings, but in a separate account I labeled the Freedom Fund. The second step was to enforce the boundaries completely. I blocked their numbers, their social media accounts, and the numbers of every relative who had acted as their mouthpiece. I sent a single, final email to my sister, Sarah, the one who had been caught in the middle. I told her I loved her, but that I could not have a relationship with her as long as she remained neutral in the face of their abuse. I told her my door was always open if she ever found her way out. It was the hardest thing I had to do, but it was necessary. The third and final step was to move. My uncle and aunt helped me pack up my apartment. It was a strange, liberating process, sorting through a life and deciding what was worth bringing into the future. I found a new job in a city 3 states away. It was a lateral move, not a promotion, but it was a move toward anonymity and peace. The story ends here, but my life did not. It began. I'm writing this from the living room of my new apartment. It's smaller than my old one, but the light is better. Outside my window, I can see a park where dogs chase frisbees and children fly kites. I am still in therapy. I still go to my meetings. Some days, the grief of what I lost is a heavy weight. The phantom limb of a family still aches. There are permanent scars. The trust I once had in the basic goodness of people is gone, replaced by a cautious vigilance. But most days, I feel a quiet, resilient hope. I have my chosen family in Michael and Carol, who I talk to every week. I have my work, my sobriety, my safety. The legal battle taught me that my voice matters. It taught me that the truth, even when it is buried under years of lies, has power. And it taught me that the most important kind of savings isn't money. It's the small, daily deposits of self-respect and courage that build a life of incalculable worth. A life that is, finally and completely, my own. Well, if you made it through all 10,000 words of that family drama, you deserve a medal. Seriously, thank you for sticking with it. If you want more stories of triumph over terrible people, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button.